Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, just days away from the inauguration of Nigeria's next president, and there are still tensions over Bola Tinubu's controversial victory. The Supreme Court tosses out a suit that tried to disqualify his VP from ever having run in February's election. Also, with the death toll from the notorious Shakahola forest massacre topping 239, there are more calls in Kenya for tighter regulation of churches. And women are the backbone of African business, but that's not reflected in who banks are lending to. We speak to one investment lawyer who set up an organization that matchmakes entrepreneurs with the money and the know-how needed to scale up. But first, Nigeria's Supreme Court has dismissed a case by the opposition PDP party that tried to disqualify the incoming vice president-elect from having ever stood as a candidate in February's election. Kashim Shettima shared the ruling APC party's ticket with President-elect Bola Tinubu. The PDP had argued that Shettima's nomination for VP was unconstitutional because he was also contesting the senatorial seat for Borno State at the same time. If the case had been carried forward, it could have undermined Tinubu's position. He is being sworn in on Monday. Earlier, I spoke to Sam Olakoya, who told us more about why this case is so important.
The opposition was trying to use Shettima to bring down Tinubu. The opposition said Shettima was not competent to contest that election because he had a double nomination for Senate and for Vice President. If the court had agreed to this, it would have meant the disqualification of the president himself. We've seen a similar case where the disqualification of a deputy had meant the disqualification of the man who actually won the main election. And of course, this will have caused a whole lot of confusion, not just around Nigeria, but even around the world, given that we're expecting world leaders to be in Nigeria for the swearing in just Monday, a matter of hours away. And for all these leaders to be told that, sorry, this swearing in might not take place, or another person is to be sworn in. It will have been quite a serious issue. The confusion, and then I honestly don't know whether even the opposition candidate will have been able to be sworn in on Monday, given the very short period between when this judgment was passed and then when the swearing in is ought to have taken place.
As you've mentioned, it is indicative of this pushback against Tinubu himself. He's going to be sworn in on Monday now, it looks like. Nothing's going to get in the way of that. But we still have a couple of suits from the opposition trying to get his victory rolled back. What is the mood in Nigeria now, bearing in mind all these tensions still flying around? What's the mood in Nigeria ahead of the inauguration of Bola Tinubu?
We've had two major cases that has been dispensed with. And if you consider the fact that we have a number of litigation pending, then it gives a sense of the actual situation on the ground. The nation is very strongly divided. It's even worse in the sense that Bola Tinubu, who won the election, did not win a simple majority. He won just 35%. If the second and third candidates had come together, they belong to the same party originally. If they had contested together, they would have defeated Tinubu. So this shows you the level of opposition he is facing, and that reflects in the mood of the nation that majority of people are not in support of the president-elect, and many people are obviously not happy.
Sam Olakoya there for us. Now, Kenya has extended the dawn-to-dusk curfew at the ranch in Kilifi County for another month. It's where mass graves in the Shakahola forest are still being exhumed as victims of a starvation cult continue to be unearthed. Security teams are still also looking for survivors. About 91 people have been rescued, 39 arrested, 600 are still missing, and at least 239 were killed or died. all followers of Pastor Paul Mackenzie, who encouraged his followers to starve to death. The case has prompted calls for tighter restrictions for places of worship in Kenya. Our team report from Nairobi.
Sunday Mass at the Church of Healing and Encouragement. At night, Kennedy Wanyama works as a security guard, and during the day, he's a pastor. He's set up around 10 places of worship.
The government of Kenya does not have any problem with people who are raising their churches. They have given us a conducive environment for us to worship, because in the Constitution of Kenya, there is that thing which is enshrined in it, that freedom of worship. So there is no problem with the government of Kenya to start a church in Kenya.
Thanks to this, there are thousands of similar spaces throughout Kenya. Most do not pose any threat to the faithful. However, since April, Kenya has been gripped by the grim story of the Good News International Church, founded by Pastor Mackenzie. The death of hundreds of his followers has spotlighted the potential risks of lax supervision of churches. Many people are now asking for more religious regulation, but some spiritual leaders aren't keen.
We need to self-regulate ourselves. We do not want, because to be regulated by the government, that will take away the freedom that we have enjoyed all through.
A senatorial commission is currently examining proposals to regulate religious institutions. That's likely to be tricky. In deeply religious countries like Kenya, politics and religion are often enmeshed, according to this professor.
The government, they have been fearing to control religion. Religion is a system of social control. If you want to deal with people, give them religion. There are easier means. Trust and obey. There's no other way but to believe in Jesus.
In 2016, evangelical churches had already stood up against a regulatory law. Ever since, new abuses have prompted President William Ruto to promise the end of impunity for abusive religious leaders. He has yet to give details on concrete measures.
More than 30 women abducted by separatists in Cameroon have been released. The women were taken early this month from the village of Babanki in the northwest. They were reportedly targeted because they tried to protest against illegal taxes that the armed Anglophone secessionists were levying on locals. Some of the freed captives say that they were tortured whilst they were held. The militants have warned communities that they will be punished if they don't pay up. Now, Africa has the highest percentage of women entrepreneurs in the world. Compared to 5.7% in Europe, more than a quarter of all businesses in Africa are either started or run by women. And many are often highly innovative. But despite proving themselves again and again, lending to women is still seen as riskier, and they struggle to get funding. Many also lack the financial literacy needed to go after conventional loans. Earlier, I spoke to Efe Ukala, who is trying to bridge that financial gap. She's the founder of ImpactHer, which is aimed at helping the continent's women realize their economic potential.
This has been an incredible journey. To your point, ImpactHer was created to try to help bridge this gap on the continent. And we focus on providing trainings to women, capacity building, the skill set. Because sometimes it's not only just about the finance, which is, a huge gap, but also about the resources. And when we talk about finance, there is a $42 billion gender financing gap for African women entrepreneurs. But when you look at the continent, in fact, I believe compared to other continents, African women are the most entrepreneurial. And I think that was put out by the World Bank. So it's kind of a no-brainer as to why a majority of what I call, of a group of people that contribute to Africa's backbone is actually still left behind in trying to ensure Africa's economic prosperity.
So is it about just the principle of equality, or is there some specific measurable economic loss to the continent?
Oh, huge. I believe this was a Mackenzie in one of its report years ago. It did indicate that, if we sort of bridge the gender gap in general, or even achieve some sort of parity, we could be contributing to about $12 trillion to the economy, right? So this is it's even also more than the numbers, because as we know, women are more likely to invest into their communities when they have resources. Studies have shown that the woman is not just thinking about her own economic liberation, but a liberation of her family, her children, her neighbors, and also women are more likely to employ youth and women once they have the ability to, as opposed to men.
So if the benefits are so kind of starkly obvious in a way, why are financial institutions still holding back in putting their money behind women business owners?
I think I would say that is a bit of a structural issue. And I would take an example for some of the bank loans that are available. In fact, some of those banks will say we have a desk dedicated to women entrepreneurs. But when you dig deeper, you would find the collateral requirements doesn't quite add up, because where you tell the woman, we have this woman desk, so come to this specialized desk to get funding for your business. And then the woman gets there, and guess what? She's been asked for landed collateral, landed property, right? And we know, like on the continent, in most African communities, women don't actually own land. So why are you asking her to bring forth that which she doesn't have? Or in fact, one of the women we worked with in South Tom, she said when they realized she didn't have land, they said, okay, can you bring a man as a collateral, like to guarantee the loan, right? And she said, you know what, I have access to, a few strong women that I'm very close to. Can I bring that woman or group of those women? And they said, no, it has to be a man. So where we have structural issues that are not quite addressed, yet we're presenting those opportunities to women in the form of loans, saying, there is, you can theoretically apply for a loan, but when it comes to real access, we haven't broken down the barriers that would actually allow.
What are you doing to try and address that? What does ImpactHer do?
So we work with the women to try to prepare them to access this. Unfortunately, we can't. Independently break down the system, right? But what we've also been doing is that with the banks, we've actually been working with a few banks to really, really look at what those requirements are and call them to the table and say, you know what, this is not realistic for women in this community. This has to change. So we're trying to sort of break down those collateral requirements and so forth. So ImpactHer basically is working with the banks to try to restructure, as well as getting those women businesses ready for accessing those finance that they need.
Efe Ukala there, the founder of ImpactHer. That is, though, where we're going to have to leave Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again if you can. Till then, take care.
Welcome to this special history episode of French Connections Plus.
In this show, we're going to turn the spotlight on what has come to be seen as a dark period. The Middle Ages, le Moyen Âge in French.
The Middle Ages covered 1,000 years, centuries full of political upheaval, royal intrigue, war, disease, and famine.
But it was also a rich period of creative and intellectual development when France in many ways took on the shape we know today.
Join us as we time travel back to le Moyen Âge.
French Connection Plus on France 24 and France24.com.